I was 24, scraping by on odd jobs, when I signed up to be an overnight security guard at Blackwood Asylum. It was a crumbling relic of a psychiatric hospital in upstate New York, abandoned since the 1950s, nestled in a valley choked with gnarled pines and perpetual fog. The gig sounded straightforward: sit in a guard shack from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., keep out trespassers, and patrol the perimeter every 2 hours. Easy money, they said. But Blackwood wasn't just a building, it was a presence, heavy and alive, watching me from the moment I arrived. The shack was a rotting wooden box, barely bigger than a closet, with a single bulb flickering like it was on its last breath. A rusty heater hissed in the corner, spitting out more noise than warmth. The only equipment was a cracked flashlight, a radio that only picked up static, and a logbook with pages so brittle they crumbled at the touch. Across the gravel lot, Blackwood loomed a Gothic monstrosity with broken windows like empty eyes, its walls stained with decades of neglect. The air was thick, pressing against my chest, and every sound, the wind, the creak of the shack, felt like a warning. I'd worked nights before, but this place was different. It didn't feel abandoned. It felt occupied. My first patrol was at 1 a.m. I grabbed my flashlight, its beam weak and unsteady, and stepped into the cold. The fog was so dense I could barely see 10 feet ahead, and the gravel crunched under my boots, unnervingly loud in the silence. The asylum's chained front doors gleamed dully in the moonlight, the padlock rusted but intact. My job was to circle the building, check for signs of vandals, and report anything odd. But as I walked, a prickle ran down my spine, like I was being followed. I kept glancing over my shoulder, but there was nothing, just fog and shadows. Halfway around, I heard it, a faint tapping like fingernails on glass, coming from a second-story window. I froze, my flashlight trembling as I aimed it upward. The window was black, reflecting nothing, but the tapping grew louder, rhythmic, like someone was beckoning me. My mind raced for explanations, a loose shutter, a rat, but my gut screamed that something was up there, watching. I forced myself to move, the tapping fading as I rounded the corner. Then came the hum, a low, guttural drone, like a chant from deep inside the asylum. It wasn't words, just a vibration that crawled under my skin, making my teeth ache and my head throb. My radio crackled, spitting static so loud I jumped. I clicked it on, my voice shaking. "Base, this is Ryan. You copy?" No answer. Just more static, and then a whisper, clear as day, asterisk, stay out. Asterisk, I ripped the radio off my belt, staring at it. The battery was dead, I checked it when I started. It shouldn't have made a sound. My heart pounded as I stuffed it in my pocket, telling myself I was tired, imagining things. But the hum was louder now, pulsing like a heartbeat, and the air felt colder, heavier, like it was trying to choke me. I reached the back of the building, where a rusted fire escape led to a shattered window. The ladder was down, swaying slightly like someone had just used it. I hadn't heard footsteps. My flashlight caught something on the ground, a woman's shoe caked in dirt like it had been buried for decades and dug up. My breath hitched as I backed away, and that's when the hum turned into a scream. It wasn't human, too loud, too raw, like 100 voices tearing through the walls. It echoed in my skull, drowning out my thoughts, making my vision blur. I stumbled, dropping my flashlight, and ran for the shack, the scream chasing me, growing closer until it felt like it was inside my head. I slammed the shack door shut, locking it, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the key. The scream stopped, replaced by a silence so oppressive it felt like a weight on my chest. I collapsed into the chair, clutching the logbook, staring at the door, waiting for something to break through. The bulb flickered, casting shadows that seemed to twist and writhe on the walls. To calm myself, I flipped through the logbook, its pages filled with faded entries from past guards, heard voices in Ward C, saw her in the window again, it's not empty. One entry, dated a month ago, just said, "I'm sorry." My stomach twisted. The supervisor never mentioned other guards. Who wrote this? At 3 a.m. I had to patrol again. The thought made my legs weak, but I needed the job. I grabbed a spare flashlight, its beam stronger, and stepped outside. The fog was thicker, swallowing the asylum's edges. The chain doors were still secure, but as I circled the building, I found footprints in the mud, bare, human, leading toward the fire escape. They weren't there before. My flashlight shook as I followed them to the ladder where they stopped. Above, the broken window gaped like a wound. The hum was back, deafening, pulling me upward. I don't know why I climbed. Fear, curiosity, or something else. It was like the asylum wanted me to. The ladder creaked, each step feeling like a descent into hell. I reached the window, peering into a hallway lined with peeling paint, rusted gurneys, and shattered glass. The air smelled of mold and something sweeter, like rotting flesh. The hum was everywhere, vibrating in my bones. I stepped inside, my boots echoing on the tile. That's when I saw her, a woman or what used to be one, standing at the end of the hall. Her head was tilted at an impossible angle, her eyes black voids, her mouth stretching into a smile that was too wide, too wrong. She didn't move, just stared, and the hum became her voice, whispering my name. I screamed, stumbling back, and fell through the window, catching myself on the fire escape. The laughter followed, cold, sharp, inhuman, as I scrambled down the ladder. I ran for the shack, locking myself in, and stayed there until dawn, praying the door would hold. When the sun rose, I checked the asylum. The doors were chained, the footprints gone, the shoe nowhere to be found. But the logbook had a new entry in my handwriting. She's waiting. I don't remember writing it. I quit that morning. The supervisor didn't ask why, just handed me my check with a knowing look. I researched Blackwood later. It was shut down after reports of patient abuse, experiments, lobotomies, people left to rot in cells. Some said the patients' pain soaked into the walls, their spirits trapped forever. Others said the staff went mad, driven by something older, something that claimed the land long before the asylum was built. I don't know what I saw, but I know it wasn't human. And I know it's still there, waiting for the next guard to climb its stairs. I was 22, working the night shift at Rosie's Diner, a 24-hour dive off Highway 50 in Nevada. It was a lonely speck in the desert, its neon sign buzzing against the endless sand and sagebrush, serving truckers, drifters, and wanderers with nowhere else to go. The job was simple: pour coffee, sling burgers, and survive the solitude of 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I liked the quiet, the way the desert seemed to swallow sound. But that all changed the night the storm came and brought something with it. It was a Tuesday, just past midnight, when the sky cracked open. Rain hammered the diner's tin roof, loud enough to drown out the jukebox's faint hum. Lightning lit up the desert, casting jagged shadows through the windows. The neon sign flickered, its pink glow stuttering in the storm. The diner was empty except for me and Eddie, the cook, who was half asleep in the kitchen, his radio playing staticky country tunes. I was wiping the counter, the smell of grease and stale coffee thick in the air, when the bell above the door jingled. A man walked in, soaked to the bone, his trench coat dripping puddles on the checkered floor. He was tall, unnaturally pale, with eyes too big for his face, like they were drinking in the light. His smile was all teeth, no warmth, and it made my skin crawl. "Evening," he said, his voice smooth like it was sliding under my skin. "Coffee, Black?" I nodded, pouring it, but my hands shook. His fingers were long, too long, curling around the mug like spider legs. He didn't drink, just stared at the coffee, then at me, his eyes unblinking. "Quiet night," he said. "You ever get lonely out here?" I forced a smile, muttering something about managing, but his gaze was heavy, like it was peeling me apart. I busied myself behind the counter, avoiding those eyes, but I felt them, sharp as needles, tracking every move. The bell jingled again, and 2 truckers stumbled in, shaking off the rain, their laughter loud and human. I exhaled, relieved, and served them, ignoring the man at the counter. But his presence lingered, a cold weight on my back. When I glanced over, he was gone. His coffee was untouched, but the mug was cracked, split clean down the side like it had been crushed. I hadn't heard the door. I checked outside, nothing but rain and darkness. My heart raced, but I told myself he'd slipped out quietly. People do that, right? Around 2 a.m., the storm grew worse. The power wavered and the neon sign died, plunging the diner into shadow. Eddie cursed, saying he'd checked the breaker in the back. I stayed up front, the emergency lights casting a sickly glow on the empty booths. That's when I heard it, a wet, scraping sound like something dragging itself across the floor. It came from the kitchen, where Eddie had gone. I called his name, my voice trembling. No answer. Just the scraping, louder, closer, like nails clawing at tile. My pulse pounded as I grabbed a knife from the counter, its weight cold in my hand, and crept toward the kitchen. The emergency lights buzzed, shadows twisting on the walls like living things. I saw Eddie's flashlight on the floor, rolling in a puddle of something dark. Blood. My stomach lurched, bile rising in my throat. The scraping stopped, replaced by a gurgling laugh, low and wet, coming from the walk-in freezer. I backed away, the knife shaking, and ran for the front door. It was locked. I hadn't locked it. Lightning flashed, and in the window's reflection, I saw him, the man in the trench coat, standing behind me, his head tilted, his mouth stretched into a grin that reached his ears. I screamed, spinning around, but he was gone. The door was unlocked now, swinging in the wind. I bolted into the storm, rain stinging my face, and dove into my car, locking the doors. I sat there, trembling, watching the diner's windows through the downpour. The rain blurred everything, but I swore I saw a shadow move inside, tall, wrong, pacing behind the counter. My breath fogged the windows as I waited, too terrified to move. Around 4 a.m., I saw headlights, another customer. I forced myself back inside, dreading what I'd find. Eddie was there, alive, wiping down the grill, saying he'd slipped and hit his head. The blood was gone. The mug was whole. But the knife I dropped was embedded in the counter, blade first, driven in so deep I couldn't pull it out. I quit that week, but the nightmares followed. I couldn't shake those eyes, that smile. I started digging into Rosie's history. Locals said it was built on cursed land, a stretch of desert where travelers vanished during storms. Old-timers whispered about a man in a trench coat who appeared every few years, always at night, always during a storm. Some called him a ghost, others something older, something that fed on fear and loneliness. I found a newspaper clipping from 1973. A waitress at Rosie's had disappeared, last seen during a storm, her car found empty on the highway. Her name was scratched into the counter, faint but unmistakable, right where the knife had been. I don't know what he was, but he wasn't human. And I know he's still out there, waiting for the next storm to walk into Rosie's, for the next lonely waitress to pour his coffee. I was a forklift driver at a massive distribution warehouse on the outskirts of Chicago, a concrete labyrinth of pallets and steel that stretched into the dark. The night shift ran from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., just me, Maria, and Tom moving inventory under flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like angry insects. The place was always cold, the air thick with dust and the faint tang of oil. It paid well, but it was grueling, and the warehouse had a way of making you feel small, like you were an intruder in someone else's domain. I didn't realize how true that was until the night I learned I wasn't alone. It started with the shadows. The lights were patchy, casting shapes that seemed to move when you weren't looking, a figure at the end of an aisle, gone when you turned. I blamed it on exhaustion. Night shifts grind you down, make your eyes play tricks. But then I started hearing things. Footsteps echoing when no one was around. Whispers, too faint to make out, drifting from the stacks like they were calling my name. I told Maria one night, over lukewarm coffee in the break room. She laughed, but it was forced, her eyes darting to the door. "Old buildings talk," she said. "Just ignore it." But I saw her flinch when the lights flickered, and I knew she'd heard them too. One night, around 1 a.m., I was moving pallets in aisle 17 when my forklift died. No warning, just stopped. The lights above flickered, then went out, plunging the aisle into darkness. I cursed, grabbing my flashlight, its beam weak against the shadows. I climbed down to check the battery and froze. Etched into the concrete, fresh, like it had just been carved, were the words, "Asterisk, I see you." Asterisk, my blood ran cold. No one else was in the warehouse. Maria was on break, Tom was in the loading bay. I called out, my voice echoing, swallowed by the dark. No answer, just the whispers, louder now, circling me, their words clearer. Asterisk, you don't belong. Asterisk. I ran for the break room, my flashlight beam bouncing, the whispers growing into a chant, ancient and guttural, vibrating in my chest. I burst through the door, slamming it shut. Maria was there, eating a sandwich, her eyes wide. I told her about the carving, my voice shaking, but when we checked, it was gone. The forklift worked fine. She said I was stressed, maybe hallucinating, but her hands trembled as she poured more coffee. I wanted to believe her, but the air felt wrong, like the warehouse was watching us, waiting. The next night, I stayed late to finish a job. Everyone else had clocked out, leaving me alone in the cavernous space. I was in aisle 9 when the lights went out, not just one, but every light in the warehouse. My flashlight flickered, its beam fading to a dim glow. The whispers were back, clear and cold. Asterisk, you shouldn't be here. Asterisk, the air turned frigid, my breath visible in the dark. Then I saw it. A figure at the end of the aisle, tall, featureless, like a silhouette cut from the void. It didn't move, but its presence was crushing, like a hand squeezing my heart. Its eyes, though I couldn't see them, felt like they were peeling me apart. I backed away, tripping over a pallet, my flashlight clattering to the floor. The whispers turned into screams, filling my head, drowning out my thoughts. I ran, the figure's presence chasing me, its weight pressing against my back. The aisles seemed to twist, stretching longer, the exit always just out of reach. I stumbled over crates, my hands scraping on the concrete, my breath ragged. The screams grew louder, joined by laughter, cold, inhuman, echoing from every corner. I reached the exit, pounding on the locked door, screaming until the security guard outside heard me and let me out. I collapsed in the parking lot, gasping, the screams fading as the warehouse loomed behind me. I quit that night, never going back. But I couldn't let it go. I dug into the warehouse's history. It was built over an old factory that burned down in the 1920s, killing dozens of workers trapped inside. Some said their spirits lingered, bound to the concrete, angry at the living. Others whispered of something older, something that claimed the land long before the factory, something that didn't like intruders. I found a journal in the library, written by a worker from the 1970s, describing the same whispers, the same figure, the same words carved into the floor. The last page was a warning. It knows your name. I don't know what I saw, but I know it wasn't human. And I know it's still there, waiting for the next shift to start.